All right, everybody, welcome to Brighter. So, very big news going to happen today on Thursday, either late tonight or early Friday. The big three automakers union, 146,000 workers, are going to decide if they're going to go on strike or not. We're going to watch a video of President Shawn Fain and see how he's feeling. We've got Brian White with us. Brian is a host of his own YouTube channel, MyTeslaWeekend. He's actually right now in Detroit. He's been talking to some folks on the ground about what's happening with the union situation. Welcome, Brian. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Herbert. It is a pleasure as always. Yeah, Detroit, ground zero for workers' unions for automotive. And I've had a chance to talk with quite a few people at different levels in their career. Some retired, some still working to get a feel for what's going on.
Okay, so what we're going to do today is we're going to cover kind of like all sides of this. We're going to see whether or not this could be a big deal or not a big deal. There are some articles written that they think this could be like a significant, once in a decade kind of strike that could be significant impact to the big three in Detroit. Some also think that maybe they're already seeing concessions by the union and maybe they might back down. And I know you've been speaking to some folks right there. You're going to share your opinion. So let me just set the stage here first. We're going to watch a 3.5-minute video of President Shawn Fain when he was at CNBC yesterday, and we're going to watch what he says when he was asked whether or not they feel like, can these big three automakers compete on a relative basis when you've got Tesla cost cutting, and yet you've got these unions demanding a wage raise. So before I move into that, can you just share what your high level thoughts are? What's happening with this union situation?
So the union was incredibly beneficial to the workers 100 years ago when they were treated like cattle. The unions, how they got the 40-hour work week, how they got great wages in the first place. But these companies were extremely profitable, and as the years went on, they became less profitable. They became less competitive with Japanese rivals at the time, and now German and other rivals as well, and even just other cities and states. So what's happened is the wages are not as big as they used to be. It's no longer the gravy job, the amazing job that you thought you had. And a lot of workers are very frustrated with that. And they've had it. They've had it up to here. And the question is, can the automakers afford to pay them the kind of wages that these people frankly deserve, and without going out of business? And that's the balancing act that has to happen. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Okay. So let me set the stage in terms of the context. So this was a Forbes article written several days ago, basically saying that it's, they think it's that if Elon and Tesla, they're going to benefit significantly from a highly likely strike that's going to happen against the Detroit Big Three. This was the article's opinion at the time. And they said that, Tesla is going to be big beneficiaries if this happened. 146,000 UAW workers will likely go on strike on Friday. And then this person, the Wedbush analyst Dan Ives, said that if a strike happens, this is going to delay the EV roadmap and production for the big three, GM, Ford, and Stellantis, into 2024. And so this is a crucial period, of course, and Tesla is well suited to benefit from any work stoppage at its rivals. And then meantime, you have this Eric Gordon, a business professor at University of Michigan. He's predicting it's going to be the most severe and most dramatic strike in 50 years. So I said earlier, decade. It's actually 50 years is what this guy was saying. So he's calling a strike highly likely. But having said that, just 2 days ago, the United Auto Workers Association reduced its demand for pay raises. So they seem to have actually stepped back and said, okay, we only want just mid 30% range over the next 4 years as it's heading towards it. And so now some people think that this is it marks a willingness by the union president, Shawn Fain, to compromise on one of the union's top demands, holding firm. So do you think, Brian, do you think that there's actually kind of capitulation here and trying to, back down a bit?
So the first thing is, as of yesterday, the strikers are already on the picket line. They're not blocking factories. The work hasn't stopped as of yesterday, but the picketers are in front of the businesses, in front of the buildings. They're downtown at like GM headquarters with picket signs. So the strike, they are ready for it. They are prepared for it, and they are all about it. It is going to happen. I cannot imagine that the deadline will come and go without
Really?
with a they are ready, and dropping from 40% to 30%. Well, that's only one of the demands. And 30% is still a very substantial raise, but they also are saying we need to be in the battery factories with our unions there. And I think that's just going to be a no go, because then you can't pay you can't pay the high wages that you need to attract the battery talent. They're saying we also want 32-hour work week instead of 40. And these people already work 50, 60 hours. So all that means is that their overtime would kick in a full day earlier. That's another way of getting a big raise. They ask for way too much. They ask for the moon. And that's a normal negotiating strategy. Start as high as you can, meet in the middle. But I think what this tells me is Sean Fain realizes they started way too high, because the sentiment on the ground is that people here are ready to strike. And the concern, at least among the parts suppliers that I've talked to, they're worried that they've seen this before. They've seen with the steel union, not so much the union, but the steel plants that were in the entire Midwest. A lot of them were run into the ground. As late as the 70s and early 80s, they were still using, they'd never switched to AC current for their buildings. They had old DC current Edison electric plants for their steel mills. They'd never invested. And when the workers said, we need more money, they just shut them down. They just said, you know what, we'll get our steel from Japan, we'll get our steel from elsewhere, because we're just not willing to pay the money. And now the market for automotive manufacturing has become so global that it's not impossible for GM to just say, you know what, we're not going to build a UAW plant anymore. They have hundreds of thousands of employees, and only about 50,000 of them are in the union. We'll close those factories. We'll continue our operations in the southern U.S., in Mexico, in other countries, and we'll just let this chapter close. And that's a big fear
Wow.
from a lot of people in the community.
Okay, good. Wow, Brian, that's dropping info. So let me go play this 3.5 minute video.
At this point is
Sean
actually
Fain.
trying to cut costs. He's already got a huge competitive advantage at Tesla in terms of making the EVs. And you know what the sales of the big three EVs are right now. So we're just talking about relative, whether you're going to be able to compete on a relative basis with a lean and mean Tesla when you're asking for a 40% increase in wages. It just doesn't.
Competition is code word for race to the bottom. And I'm not concerned about Elon Musk building more rocket ships so he can fly into outer space and stuff. Our concern is working class people need their share of economic justice in this world. And, people want to talk about class warfare and say this is class warfare. Class warfare has been going on in this country for the last 40 years. And the billionaire class has been walking away with everything while the working class has been scraping to get by paycheck to paycheck. And it's time that changes. The EV transition, billions, hundreds of billions of our taxpayer dollars are helping fund this transition. And labor cannot be left behind. Workers deserve their share of equity in this economy.
Sean, just looking at the numbers, you mentioned that labor makes up 5 to 8% of the cost of a car. If you increase labor by 40%, then your costs go up to 7 to 11.2% of the cost of the car. Just moving on a bigger portion of some of those things. The other issue you're dealing with is you're asking for a shorter work week. I understand your argument that the CEOs are making much more money and that's not fair, that the rest of you aren't. Would you be satisfied if they gave back some of those raises and then say, therefore, we would take a smaller pay increase?
Not at all, because that's just a shell game. I mean, our workers, let me explain this, I guess, to be as clear as I can about this. Our wages have went backwards since 2007, 16 years ago. When a worker hired in and was promoted to full time, they are $10 an hour behind in today's wages. In 2023, when you hire in and get promoted to full time, you're making $10 an hour less than you were making in 2007. It's unacceptable. Inflation hasn't slowed down. Price of everything's went up astronomically since 2007. Our purchasing power has been severely weakened. And so not at all. And that's really not what this is all about. I mean, at the end of the day, I'll go back to this, they could double our wages, not raise the price of vehicles, and still make billions in profits.
Sean, it's Phil again. Barclays put out a note yesterday saying you are less likely to strike Ford, that it may be further along in the negotiations, probably has the weakest of the big three balance sheets that are out there. And because they employ the most UAW members, you are less likely to strike them. And then last night, Jim Farley, when they unveiled the new F-150, said, look, there's a limit. We will make offers, but there's a limit to how far we can go. Is it accurate to say that Ford is least likely to be struck by the UAW?
As it stands right now, all three are most likely to be struck unless we get a deal by September 14th at midnight. There is no lead company. All three are expected to deliver for their workers, and if they don't, there will be action. So there isn't a lead company. As we've said from the outset, we expect all three to have an agreement, and we'll see where that ends.
All right, September 14th, midnight is tonight. What was your sense? I mean, he seemed to just dance around a little bit, didn't really address it. You think that there's lots of money? Yeah.
Well, the first thing is, I don't care about rocket. No one asked you about rocket, Sean. Come on. And cost competitive, all I hear is a race to the bottom. I don't. That's not what I hear. When I hear cost, that's not the best EV out there happens to also be the best priced EV value by far. And yeah, the workers they're not getting their fair share. Well, a couple of problems there. The ones at Tesla are. Tesla employees are paid very well. Tesla pays their summer interns more than GM pays a starting worker on the line. And I'm sorry, GM's wages aren't good enough. Ford's wages aren't good enough. This man speaking is the union. This is the representative for those. The contract they have was negotiated by them, approved by them and their members. So who are you actually mad at? It sounds like he's mad at absolutely everyone, and that's the wrong take. He's saying that they could double the wages, keep the car the same price, and still make billions. That is not how math works.
Okay, so what's your prediction? Is it going to happen? Are they going to go on strike? I think you're on the ground right now. You're saying that it's very likely. That's what you're hearing. You're talking to people.
So I have two predictions. One is the first is that yes, there will be a strike. It may be short, but there will officially be a strike. And I think the resolution may be that they get a big raise, but it slowly graduates, slowly phases in, and during that time, they start closing the plants.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I mean, they have to manage their balance sheet. But thank you so much, Brian. I think you brought, again, some brilliant insights. I think that makes sense, what you just said, that it's likely that they will still do the strike, but they'll negotiate something that's kind of like slow, just to save face and so forth, right?
Yes, and to allow time for the transition to new factories.
So you think that the strike will be short, and so this could be a big deal for Tesla, beneficiary from this, but it could also be just jumping and moving forward again, and just something that was a blip, right?
If there's any delay in taking delivery of parts for cars, this benefits Tesla because the suppliers will have more bandwidth to deal with anything Tesla related, and it makes them, again, the buyer of choice. The one company we have that we know is never going to go on strike. They place an order, we're going to fill it.
Okay. Thank you so much, Brian. Please, folks, follow him at MyTeslaWeekend on YouTube. He is unique of all of us Tesla community experts out there and who have YouTube channels, because he actually goes and he makes a point to fly out there. He's physically on the ground in Detroit right now for the Detroit Auto Show, but also to interview suppliers and to get the real detail of what's happening with us. Thank you so much for joining me today, Brian. Appreciate you as always. Love you. See you guys. Hey there, thank you for joining me. If you can, please consider supporting this channel so I can keep it going. It's a lot of work arranging all these amazing interviews. One of the easiest ways is just to click that join button and become a member of the channel. Thank you very much, and let's get brighter.